Welcome to the Chow Podcast, hosted by Animal Friends of Wyoming County, where our mission is to help care for animals held by the Wyoming County Animal Shelter and promote responsible pet care in Wyoming County. Thank you for joining us. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chow Podcast. I am your host, Sam Goodell, the president of Animal Friends of Wyoming County. To anyone who is listening to this on a streaming platform such as Apple or Spotify or Amazon, we do have a live video version of this on our YouTube and Rumble pages, so go and check that out. We are bringing to you an interesting episode, a new episode that we've been in the works with for quite some time now. Before we dive into anything though, I want to introduce my co-host here. To my left, Miss Jessie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Sam. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And so we also have someone else that's a special guest too, in addition to our special guest. So I'm gonna have her introduce herself real quick. Officer Justa Goodell.
Hi, my name is Justa Goodell. I'm the Wyoming County Animal Control Officer for Wyoming County, New York.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. She also just so happens to be my mother. So, to jump right on into it, one of the things that animal control really gets a lot of questions about, or even our Animal Friends of Wyoming County group gets questions about, is how far does law enforcement have, or what does law enforcement have to do with animal control? Aren't they the same thing? What are the differences? And we are very happy to say that we have a guest here today who's going to help break down all those differences and talk about what our partnership is like between animal control and animal control / dog control and police officers and law enforcement. And he is very admirable person. I've had the privilege to see one of his lectures before, and I took away so much information. So I highly recommend, if you get a chance to ever meet him, please do. I'm gonna have him introduce himself though to our audience. Go right ahead, sir.
I'm Reno DiDomenico. I'm the Vice President and Chief for law enforcement at Lollypop Farm in Rochester, New York.
Awesome. Thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? What inspired you to become a police officer and law animals?
Yeah, sure. Of course, I grew up in Monroe County, and I ended up becoming a Monroe County Sheriff's Deputy. Worked there for 22 years. Near the end of my career, I did a lot of domestic violence work, which was in the early 2000s. There had been a study that had come out that linked animal abuse and domestic violence together. So they ended up sending me to training in animal cruelty, and so that we could understand that a little better. And then the next thing you know, I'm working at Lollypop Farm, and I became a humane law enforcement officer there.
Awesome. And real quick before we jump into everything else, what do you like to do outside of your work?
Oh, there's a number of things. Yeah. I like, there's a number of hobbies. I jump back and forth. My main one right now is motorcycle riding, driving around New York State. But I also like to woodwork, do home improvement work.
Nice.
So
it's good to have an outlet outside of what we have to do every day, especially I can imagine in your line of work where the things that you see.
Yeah.
So thank you for being part of this podcast. We are very excited to get this started and jump in. Before we do though, we have a quick commercial break. We got to pay the bills here.
Since 1981, Daryl's Pizzeria has been serving the town of Perry, New York with delicious and amazing pizza, wings, and a variety of other complimentary dishes. Whether you are picking up in person or utilizing their local delivery service, you can always expect friendly and passionate faces from their staff. Aside from your traditional trademark food items, Daryl's also provides ice cream from Yummies in Warsaw, New York, as well as daily specials. Also, you can order your food online through their website too. Daryl's Pizzeria has been a constant sponsor of Animal Friends by helping us sell chocolate bars and calendars. Thanks to their sponsorship, we can further our education initiative and make more successful adoptions possible. Order from them today in person at 163 South Main Street, Perry, New York, 14530. Order online at darylspizzeria.com or call them at 585-237-2113. That's 585-237-2113 or darylspizzeria.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Animal Friends Chow podcast. We have Officer Reno DiDomenico here, and the title of our podcast is The Dog. I'm sorry, I want to make sure I say this right. I wrote it. I should know it. The Officer and the Dog. And the main purpose of this is to talk about the partnership and the relationship between law enforcement officers, police officers, state troopers, sheriffs, your local PD, and what they do with animal control, who does what, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there on who has the power to do things, who doesn't, whose jurisdiction is this, what can animal control enforce versus what a police officer can enforce. And I know, speaking as an animal control officer myself, we run into that a lot when we get animal complaints. And so I think let's start off with Officer Domenico here with talking about an officer's point of view on animal control relations.
So it's very important that law enforcement, especially in areas where there is no SPCA. So under New York state law, a humane society can become an SPCA. In New York State, that SPCA designation means they are a law enforcement agency. So we're pretty much similar to your local law enforcement police officer. But some counties don't have that. They don't have humane law enforcement officers, so you have to heavily rely on your local law enforcement departments. New York state law, yeah.
Such as Wyoming County. We
Right.
do not have a humane investigator in our county.
Correct. So New York state law puts out in Ag and Markets law in the cruelty section that police officers must, and an SPCA may, because not every county has the SPCA. So when it comes to a difference in animal control and law enforcement, especially a humane law enforcement, most of the time your local police or dog control, their function is to protect animals from people. But they are also your dog control officers are animal people. They care a lot about animals, whether it's a dog, cat, horse, whatever it is. They still have that caring thing. So they need to be able to work with their local law enforcement. So when they see abuse, that they can call or rely on their local law enforcement officers to come out and do those investigations, which they're required to do under the law.
Is that mostly the perspective of just law enforcement, in particular police officers type thing when it comes to
Yes, in some areas there is pushback from their local law enforcement because they haven't been trained or they haven't had the experiences, or their local dog control officer might not have that relationship with their local law enforcement. And that's been a problem we've been trying to address ourselves throughout the state to make sure that law enforcement is aware that you must rely on your dog control, animal control officer when responding to animal calls.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, that's it's a blessing to have people like yourself that are able to bring awareness to this for local law enforcement officers, especially in an area such as ours that doesn't have like a humane investigator, and we rely on each other as two agencies. Officer Goodell, can you elaborate on like your perspective and your experience in Wyoming County's relationship with each other?
Well, I think that in Wyoming County we've been very blessed. Law enforcement in Wyoming County leans a lot on us and has respect for the positions that we have to take. We have a good working relationship, and we work hard at keeping it that way. And there's no agency working with another agency. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's animal or human to human. If you can work with as a group, as a unit, no matter who you are, and be compatible, a lot more gets done and a lot more laws get enforced. So it's a priority in our office to have respect for law enforcement and respond to them when they call us, do the best we can to do the best we can out on the road and on the field, in the field with them. And at the same time, we've built a good relationship with them. So in our situation, if there's a case of neglect, say the Sheriff's Department receives a call, let's just give an example of thin horses. They'll call us, we'll go out, we'll make contact with the owner, which sometimes takes a little bit if they're working people, trying to catch them, because you just can't enter someone's property, get out of your truck and enter a barn. This is private property. You have to have respect for that. There are laws that we have to follow. So sometimes there's a little bit of time frame of connection. Unless, you see something that's horrifically happening right in the field, then you can respond. So then we connect with that animal owner, whether it be cow, horses, pigs, chickens, dogs, and we see where we're at with it. We do a little bit of an interview, how long, we ask some particular questions like, when was the last time this animal saw a veterinarian? Can you show us where the food is? Can you tell us where you buy your food? We get as much information. Now, if they're resistant to it, that's when we'll call law enforcement and say, you called us out. We're now at this property. We do have the animal owner with us right now, and he is resistant, or she, to communicate with us. We're going to need your help. And then they come out and they'll say, hey, I didn't have to come out here. You could have worked with Officer Goodell, but now that you're not, this is going to become a bigger issue. Oftentimes, and actually most of the time, once the whole situation is unraveled and we get the big picture of what's going on, the animal owner will work with us and we'll set up a plan. I'm coming back in 2 weeks. When I come back, I want to see the vet paperwork. I want to see the food you're feeding. Actually, when it comes to food, I give them about 24 hours to get something in the barn. And where are you getting your products from? And we start a slow process of getting the help they need. If they're in a situation where they really cannot afford this animal, they can't eat or the horse is going to eat, then we try to find places for this horse with them working with us. So we're not taking it from them, but they're willing to surrender it maybe to another farm, or we've only had that happen a couple times. In general, we were able to work with people. So in my almost 30 years, I think there's just been 2 times where animals they were kind of pushed into, you got to do something right now. So, and oftentimes the thin horse is just a 35-year-old horse that their daughter owned. She's gone off to college, married now. They still have the horse, and it's an old horse. And it's at the end of its lifespan, and they do get thin, just like we do as we get older. I'm seeing it with my own parents. They get smaller, they get thinner. So doesn't the animal. So lots of times they can produce everything. So it kind of ends there. But once in a while, it goes beyond that. But without working with law enforcement, without having their backing, we're really in trouble. And they, at the same time, don't do the ag and market laws enough for most of them to know where do we start. So they kind of lean on us to know that law well enough to direct them. They're still going to be doing the enforcement if there's going to be tickets or court, but they need sometimes help to get there and what needs to be done. And they really lean on us to know that. So,
Yeah. And to add to that, one of the biggest issues is everybody wants to help the animal right away. And in order to build a case, sometimes you have to do other steps before you can actually remove an animal. So like in a thin horse situation, it might be an older horse, but in order for law enforcement to document that, it needs to be at a vet. It needs to, there's steps that have to be taken before that animal can actually be removed from the property.
Yep, I think that's a very good point to bring up, because a lot of phone calls that animal control would receive is there's something happening right now and something needs to be done with it right now. And the process, it takes time, because you have to build up an accurate case that's foolproof if you need to take action on something. So you can't always solve the dog hoarding issue, or the thin horse issue, or the sheep that don't have their hooves trimmed issue, like just like that. You know, it takes time, and owners need to be aware of, hey, a complaint has come in about this. Like, they're not the only ones in the world that are seeing this, and they need to have, you know, your guys' guidance and giving them the option to correct it.
Yeah, I find sometimes the most uncomfortable part is convincing the complainant that this is a timely matter.
Yeah.
They want it done yesterday. I've been seeing this for 4 months. Do it today. I'll tell you a crazy story. I had a person who worked shift work where they went to work just at daylight, come home just at dusk. So they would go by this farm, and every day they saw this dog at the end of a chain, just standing, staring at the house. And they called it, they said, we've been looking at this for months. So they called me, she said, something is wrong. This dog just is looking like, get me in the house. So of course, she calls me after she goes to work. I then go during daylight and go up, and I pull in the driveway at this beautiful farm. Off to the side is a dog house with a dog that's been cut out of plywood. And it's positioning itself looking at the house. Well, of course, the farmer sees me in the barnyard, and he comes out, why are you here? And of course, then I had to calm that down, because why is the county in his barnyard? And I explained that I had a complaint, but obviously, this is not a neglected animal. And of course, we got to laughing about it, but I had to work hard to get him to calm down, because he was not happy that law enforcement was in his driveway. So when I called the woman back, she couldn't believe it. I said, have you ever gone by there during the daytime? And she goes, no. And I said, you need to do that. Well, then about a week later, I get a call. I'm so sorry, I had no idea. You know, so that can be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
Or they don't have shelter. Then you find out the dog can go in and out of a milk house. There's plenty of shelter. They're just not seeing it go in it, and they're assuming it can't get to it. And so a lot of things, I'll be honest, 80% of the calls we get really can get resolved itself just by going there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a lot of education as well, because you know, some people, the way they treat animals have been taught to them over the generations, and well, this is the way, you know, my father did it. This is the way my grandfather did it, and you know, times have changed, and with everything, time changes, and laws change, and how you treat animals is different.
Yeah.
I'm finding, and maybe you have a different perspective, but I'm finding the more we educate, and the more there's more awareness, like this program right now, and animal control having more of a positive input in the community, less and less you're seeing that dog tied out to a tree. Less and less you're finding it. You still have it, but not nearly as much as I did when I started back in the late 90s, where it was 2/3 of the calls I went on. These dogs had no proper housing. Their food bowls were almost buried into the ground, covered with green slime. You wondered when they got fed. The dog didn't even have a name. You know, we don't see that. It's rare we see that now. And to like someone like Sam and my other deputy Daryl, is when you find it now, you're like, wow, but that's what I was seeing all the time when we first started. And that all goes to how we are progressively starting to look at companion animals and how we treat them.
Yes.
And laws, laws have changed. And it's unfortunate that we have to have a law to make people be better with their animal, but that's just the way it is, you know. That's like having a car. If you didn't have to have it inspected, you probably wouldn't know your brakes were bad, because you just don't say, oh, every year I'm just going to have my car looked at. But because you have to have it inspected, you catch those things. And that's kind of how the law is. Because there is a law, now we can see things a little clearer. So
I think most laws are designed in that way, enforcing responsibility on the person.
Yeah.
So
Accountability.
Exactly. It's not just related to animals, like the car inspection or paying your taxes or something. There's always someone out there that's not doing it the right way or the proper way or the humane way in our cases here. And so that's why these things
laws
need to
get
be
formulated.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And I get it when people say we have too many laws about this, or there's too much about this. The problem is you get the bad actors that do the bad things, that we have to create laws to tell them you can't do this, and that's where you get a lot more stuff, which is all the good, decent people are already following it, so it's not really an impediment to them, but it's just the fact that you have it on the books.
Yeah.
Are you a history buff at all?
Not really. I might surprise you. I don't know.
So, one of my lectures that I give on the law, I did history. I like history, so I went back, and animal cruelty laws have been around since 1600s, when Pilgrims came over and they had what they called the Body of Liberties out of Massachusetts, and those were some of the first cruelty laws, because in order to survive, they needed livestock and their animals. As time progressed, laws changed. At that time, it was, bodies of liberties where you have to humanely treat your beast, right? So somebody couldn't hurt your animals. I could hurt my own, but I couldn't hurt yours. As laws changed, as we went all the way through the 1800s, and the first New York State law for animal cruelty was developed, it finally came that it protected all animals, yours or someone else's. So I couldn't be mean to my own animal. So laws change as time goes. Procedures, how you train your animals, change over time. There's an old book I found at Lollypop Farm in our old library that was a dog training book that you said use a newspaper to train your dog to potty train. Well, nowadays, try to find a behavioralist that will promote negative reinforcement in training your animal. It's almost non-existent.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, the methods change. Some of the science behind it changes, and then of course there's the social aspect of it, the social perception, how that all changes. It's funny that, and I don't mean to bring up politics at all, but there was that big thing that happened in the news where a politician was accused of killing their dog, how they did it back in the 90s. And my perspective as an animal control, and I was listening to it, and I'm like, well, back in the 90s, things are much different than the standards you have today. So today we would look at stuff like that and frown upon it as that's not a reasonable way of humanely dispatching a dog on a farm or an animal on a farm. But all places are different and things constantly evolve over time. So it's just like things like that. There's just your mindset changes, and then laws, they're slow to adjust to it, but as we just saw with this new ag and markets law, they are coming up.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So I have a question as I'm hearing all of this. Can you talk a little bit about frequency and like repeat offenders and what that looks like? I'm just thinking, like, an example would be someone who has a few dogs and they habitually are getting loose over time, and maybe that's not egregious in itself, but it's something that continues to happen. Or in the case of people that are have been repeatedly breaking the law, whether that's hoarding or conditions. So how does like frequency and severity over time impact how you might approach a particular case?
Well, in my line of work, we're dealing more with the criminal law, and when it comes to hoarding, there's a mental illness aspect to that.
Took forever for them to call it, though.
Yeah,
mental illness.
yes, yeah, but they are actually doing it.
They are.
The problem is that we run into the court system and the human rights, and we'll go out, we'll make an arrest, or we'll seize someone's animals. But what ends up happening is there's no follow-up on the mental illness part. So the court might punish them. They may give them a conditional discharge. You can't own animals for 5 years. But that ends up what ends up happening eventually, once that 5 years is up, or they might do it illegally, they start to hoard again because there is no follow-up on that mental illness. We tried to start a task force a few years ago, which included mental health counselors and having group sessions, but the courts wouldn't order it. So we end up with recidivism in hoarding cases. We also have, we go back to the interpersonal violence link, you also have people who are inherently violent. They're going to be violent to their spouse, they're going to be violent to their kids, they're going to be violent to other people, they're going to be violent to their animals. And we've made arrests on people who have been very abusive to their animals, and then, you know, a year later, that we see that they're being arrested for, you know, shooting somebody, or we may run into them again abusing another animal. So, again, without that follow-up, that either whether they're on probation or there's some sort of intervention, the recidivism is always going to be there.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because that is incredibly important to think about when you're discussing animal cruelty in general. I remember in high school, we all had to do, of course, research papers in high school. Everyone does, but mine was in regards to habits of serial killers from where they start from, and the fact that kept pointing or coming to my brain every time I turned a page of something or read about, what did this serial killer do? How was his origin? You know, all that different stuff is abuse of animals is always the first gateway for them to show there's a warning here, there's a sign, there's something. And so taking animal cruelty cases seriously when they happen helps prevent something far worse down the line. I'm glad you brought up the mental illness factor, and we need more of the psychologists and the therapists and the people that are trained to help combat that behavior.
And they're also finding now, we, again, being law enforcement, former law enforcement, we have a lot of contacts. You know, now every county has to have a threat assessment team for their local law enforcement. It actually started in Monroe County with the Monroe County Sheriff, and it's now state law that every law enforcement county has to have this. We've been involved with Monroe County since the inception of that. They're also finding now that people who are doing your active shooting have all been involved with animal abuse. So the shooting out of Buffalo at the Tops, he was abusing his neighbor's cats years before he actually did his shooting. So that's another link that's actually starting to come up as we start to deep dive into you know, people who are possible threats to the community.
Yeah. Is there anything that you can think of, piggyback off of this topic right here, that the state can do more so that would help, maybe not bring so much as bring awareness to it, which yes, we need to bring awareness to it, but help resolve something like this? The only reason I ask is I think of like some recent laws or things on a nationwide basis that get passed, and Florida just became the first state to have a kind of like a sex offender list, but domestic animal cruelty offender list or something like that statewide. And part of me has wondered, I wonder if New York will ever get to that same type of point. Would that be proactive in something like this? Or is that just another?
Well, I think what New York needs to do, and I also sit on the board of the New York State Animal Protection Federation, which is the big lobbying group for New York State. The biggest issue that we have is our animal cruelty laws. A lot of them are old. They haven't been revised. They haven't been looked at. And the seriousness of those charges have stayed. So you're looking at most of the animal cruelty laws are unclassified misdemeanors, which causes an issue in the court system because they have to follow the sentencing guidelines. We need to have stronger laws. We need to have stronger penalties. Again, a serial killer is going to go to prison and he's going to get mental health in a prison. What's happening with an unclassified misdemeanor, you get a conditional discharge, or if you plead guilty, you don't go to jail. You're released. So you have to have, in order for animal cruelty to be taken more serious, the laws have to change, and they have to be a little stricter. On the aspect of animal registry, there should be some sort of animal registry. The problem is right now there are animal registries individually in New York State in different counties. But if I'm a resident of Wyoming County and you have a registry here, but Livingston County does not, I can go to Livingston County and adopt a dog. When I'm caught here in Wyoming County, then that law takes effect. But I can go anywhere because there's no requirement for Livingston County to look on a registry. So we're looking at, on the state level, to get a statewide registry so that any shelter who's adopting a dog can go to a database, pop a person's name in, and see if that person's been arrested for animal cruelty in the past.
Yeah.
But it has to be a statewide thing. And right now, again, the state will not even look at those types of bills because they're doing so many other things, and we have our priorities.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So one of the ways we here in our county, and I've trained my 2 guys under me, when we have someone out of county come to adopt a dog, we call the county they're coming from and see, is this dog been a problem? And if they list, well, we live now in Livingston County, but we lived in Genesee County I start calling. That's why we slowly adopt out. We make sure we've checked all those if we can. That doesn't mean we're going to get it. If they're new dog control officers and there's not an established list, we're not going to get an answer anyways. But giving it a shot and saying we've documented that we did, at least we know in our brain we've done what we can. And a couple times we've had situations where they say, oh, no. And I've a couple times said they shouldn't be. We've already been to their home. There's been borderline neglect multiple times, and so it has worked. But a lot of it's communication too. You have to reach out. You've got to take the time. It's so nice to see your shelter empty out, and they're gone. That doesn't necessarily mean they're gone to the best place they can be. So we have to be invested in that animal. Every one of them that comes through the door, you got to clear it if you can. So it's just one more step, which of the zillion steps you're going to take, but it is well worth it. I had a situation a long time ago where a man from Rochester came and adopted a dog from me, drove all the way down in a storm, visited the dog. He did all the right stuff. He brought his family. We did a meet and greet. He had another dog. He brought the other dog. About 4 months later, I found out he was an abuser. And my dog that had left here, been neutered, she was a female boxer, beautiful dog. He even took it as a neutered animal. He wasn't breeding, but found out later but I had no way. And that's when it hit me. I was in tears over it when I found out. So, and a few months later, the same person ended up being killed on some kind of snowmobile accident. And I remember seeing his name pop up again. And I thought, just a reminder to go the extra mile. I should have made those calls. I was new at it. You were excited to get it home. He did everything right. He looked right. Driving clear from, Rochester down in a storm to see her. All worked out. And
well, that's the thing that we at the animal shelter do a lot is when potential adopters, and I'm sure that it's not only just stemmed from that experience that you have, but just in general, we do everything we can to vet people when they come in. But some slip through the cracks, so they're just that charismatic, or they're just that good, and all that stuff. And so I love the idea of the registry thing because that would, I feel like that would help be a gatekeep from all this other potential stuff to happen. But I'm glad you guys are at least bringing awareness to things like that. Whether the legislators are going to listen or not is a different story, but at least there's advocates like you guys.
Yeah, there's a number of bills every year in Albany to address animal cruelty or animal welfare. There's so many that You know, they have there's so
Yeah.
many other bills and other topics that they have to deal with. But we do our best, and we've had some successes over the last few years with the puppy mill bill and the sheltering standards.
Were you a part of the new? Did you have any input on the new law?
The sheltering so the federation has different departments, and that was the federation committee, the federation education committee. I'm sorry, that developed the standards.
Okay.
There is a law enforcement division. We were involved with some of the puppy mill wording. So there's different, and then you got your capital for improving shelters that we work on. So there's a number of committees within the organization that work on separate things.
Nice. It's good.
Are you getting a lot of pushback on the new law? Are you hearing a lot?
There are a lot of pushback from shelters saying that it's beyond their means. But to be honest, if you really read it, read that law, that's general husbandry practices anyway.
Absolutely.
And the ones that are I feel as law enforcement, law enforcement's very, they don't trust nobody, right? Yeah. So what ends up happening with me is like when I start hearing people being negative against that law, it's like, okay, what are they doing that they don't want to do because it's going to violate that law? And so I become very suspicious of them. But we do, at being a humane officer, there's so many rescues out there. Again, I started in rescue in the early 2000s, and in the last 20 years, there's so many rescues, and there's so many bad rescues. And that new sheltering law is part of trying to make sure that those rescues that are registered rescues are following the law when it comes to animal husbandry and animal care to animals.
No, we obviously at the shelter here have been working on this new law, so to speak, for the past year and a half since we figured out, or 2 years since time flew by so fast for it. Since we figured out what it was and getting all the details, hearing from ag and markets to say what the compliance are, sending emails or questions. Does this affect this? What do we have to do here? We've changed one form 3 different times to make sure we're meeting all the criteria that they're asking. So I feel other animal control officers growing pains, I should say, with it. But at the end of the day, when you just read it, it is a necessary thing. And it's nice to see New York State we had nothing to fear here because we knew we were doing everything right. We just wanted to make sure we had the extra proof that satisfies what the requirements are of the law, things like that. So that's what we've been working our butt off to make sure that we did everything to a T. But some poorer communities or some smaller communities or some nonprofits out there that, nonprofit shelters that don't have the adequate housing, the adequate care, now they're actually going to be looked at a little more strictly. That's a great benefit to New York State dogs.
Yeah, and what most people don't realize too is they're not really looking to shut down shelters. They're just looking them to comply with basic needs. If it raises to a level that they need to shut it down, then they probably will. But most of the inspectors from ag and markets, they're going to try, again, kind of like we talked about even with people, they're going to try to work with those shelters to get them up to compliance before they do anything to shut them down, unless they really see something egregious. And we've had some talks about that too, like what if you walk into a shelter and you see all the dogs are emaciated? Are you just going to say, well, you need to feed them more? Or are you going to call local law enforcement in and say, hey, we got cruelty going on here? So there's a little battle between that right now. Because they don't want people to be afraid of ag and markets doing inspections.
Yeah. I think that just stems back to something we talked about earlier. It's funny, those same rules that we would use as animal control or law enforcement agencies on like a farm or something to tell them, hey, you are potentially violating, or it looks like at this point you're violating it, you need corrective action. Those same rules are being applied to rescues, applied to municipal shelters and stuff like that, because as the saying goes, no one's above whatever the law is.
Right.
So,
And I found when we, some of the challenges I'm hearing from other dog control officers is who they're working for doesn't want to comply. But again, it goes back to the relationship you've built with your employer. And we have always, with us, with the Board of Supervisors, always been transparent. We've always, we're willing to have them come through our building at any time, talk to us about anything they question. Same with law enforcement. We work with them and we keep a good relationship. If you have a good relationship with your employer, and this is now becoming something they have to do, you often find they're more willing to do it if you have a good standard with them. So you have to work hard at that. That just doesn't come naturally. You really have to put it out as an employee. And it comes right back to the same, I think, the same issue. You know, there's no town in New York State that really doesn't care whether the dogs are being cared for. They're depending on their animal or dog control officer to do that. And as they've had to rise to that standard, that dog control officer has to bring that to them and say, this is what we now need to do. And if there's a good relationship, oftentimes they work it out. But I've found that sometimes there's just not good communication.
Yeah, if you look the part, you are the part.
Yes, yeah.
You know, so if you don't keep the standards up, and your Board of Supervisors come in and they look and they say this place is a mess, they're not going to be more that supportive of you.
Yeah.
If they come in and they look at you and they say, "Wow, this is clean," you know, I toured your kennels this morning when I came. I mean, I could eat off of those. So you go to some kennels, and you're like, I don't even want to walk on them. You know, so if you look the part and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, your Board of Supervisors, your public, your community is going to support you.
And you know, Sam, working with us here and Daryl, that is a priority on the top. The floors, the walls, the kennels, the blankets.
yeah, this is a people's shelter, so
Yes.
it needs to look the part that they're paying us to do.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. We don't want to slacken our work or just the perception or anything. And to circle this back around to the main topic at hand when it comes to how we work with law enforcement, when we get a 911 call, no matter what the situation is, we're respectful and we respond to it because they are our partners in dealing with these cruelty cases or neglect cases, or simple as something as a police officer pulls over a drunk driver and he has a dog in the back of the car. That's why our job is 24 hours. We get that call from an officer in Warsaw, and we have to go on Route 20 to pick up a dog in someone's car while they're going to get booked in the jail for a couple nights to sober up or something. That's just part of our partnership with each other.
Yes.
So to that, what do you think is something that both agencies, just from not just in Wyoming County specifically, of course, but just in general, what's something you could see animal control to do that would help law enforcement, police officers, and vice versa? Is there anything that sticks out to you that's...
Oh, but just be available and trustworthy. I mean, again, you know, coming from the police world, they kind of only trust each other. There's like, you got to get into their inner circle. But if you prove that you're going to be there for them, and they're able to trust you to respond to calls, you're going to have a better working relationship, and vice versa. If you call them and to come assist you, it's the same thing. When they show up, make sure that you have all your ducks in a row, so that when they show up, they're like, okay, they got their act together. I can help them. If they show up, and I've, you know, we cover 4 counties, Lollypop Farm. So, you know, I've gone to some dog control that are, you're full-time here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so some of these are part-time, and I'll show up and they're like, well, what do you got? And they're like, I don't know, we just called you. And it's kind of like, or they'll call their local police department and they'll say, I don't know, you just need to deal with this because you're the police. Well, the police officer's not going to trust them. They're not going to have that trust. So you have to make sure you know what you're doing. You need to know the laws as well, so that when you spout those off to the police officer when he shows up, he's like, they know what they're talking about, and I'm gonna help them, and I'm gonna make this arrest for them.
Yeah, it's that type of partnership. And like you said, it takes that level of trust and that transparency and that availability, reliability, most importantly. Just like how, I mean, I don't know specifically for a police officer or even a police officer here, but we are on call as animal control 24/7. If we need an officer, we could simply call into our dispatch and say, we're here to serve a ticket. It's at 7 o'clock at night, and they are threatening to blow up our car or something like that. And we have a great relationship here as our agency with them that before you know it, we'll have 2 police cars show up to say, hey, you can't do that, you know, stuff like that.
But we've worked hard to keep it that way.
Yeah.
It's a priority of ours.
And I can give you a story if you want. It's a little gory.
That's all right. We'll take it.
But, you know, a few months ago, you might have heard about it. There was a dog attack in a town in Monroe County, and the police showed up, and the dog killed its owner. And they called their local dog control officer to respond because the dog was still in the house with the body, and they could not process the scene. Dog control would not respond to help them. So the police were like, well, what do we do? We have this dog that just killed somebody. How are we going to deal with this dog? So we're available. That's the only thing in Monroe County. They know, wow, we can call the main site. Even though we don't really do dog control services, all's ours. You know, my department just does criminal investigations. We still have catch poles. We still know how to deal with animals. Yeah. So they called us, and at 9 o'clock at night, I'm riding out to this scene to take care of this dog for the police so that they can take care of the body. And the worst part is the family was there. So the family's outside having to wait a couple hours while their loved one is dead on the floor inside the house.
Jeez.
Gosh.
How many times we've gone where there's a deceased body, we go in. Your first day on the job as a full-time employee. A man had died in the house.
Yes. Yeah. Gosh, it was in Warsaw. You had just gotten over COVID, I believe.
Yes, I did.
Because you were fresh out of the hospital, still with a tank and everything because of how bad you had it. And I had to go inside I think it was me. You were there to see me do it, of course, because I was so new at it. But I had to crawl over a gentleman that was an elderly gentleman that had been deceased for days to get to his dog hiding in the corner. And no officer would go in, of course, because they call us dog. We come and help the situation and everything. And that was
we didn't even hesitate to do it.
No, you know. Yeah, you never hesitate. You never forget. Like I would never forget even the remembering of the smell of what it was. But that's part of the job. That's what we're there for. We take the dog in. I think, from my understanding, I think we found a family member or something later on.
We adopted it.
Or we either adopted it out. Yeah, something that was a while ago.
He hadn't killed the owner, but
but still, we have to go into those situations like that. And
But I mean, I guess as the person sitting here that does not have the experience that the three of you do, I think the question that comes to mind is people that are working in criminal investigations or animal control, do you get formal training in things like you're just describing? Or is that something you acclimate to over time with experience?
Yeah, probably the latter. You're either going to be able to rise to the occasion and deal with it, and then deal with it later, or it may not be the job for you. I'm actually saying, which is hard to say, but there are some people that just aren't made to deal with that kind of stress and that kind of, the PSD from it might be too much to deal with ongoing, or the never knowing what you're going to have the next moment. But I have had some training with a couple of police officers when I first started, because I was really new and I didn't know what I was doing, and they were kind of old timers, and they've long gone now. A couple have passed and a couple have retired, and they kind of would help you walk through it. But and then going to the conferences, talking to other dog control officers who've got some seasoned under their belt. I'm sure he's had training that I would never have had, but yeah, it's. There's a little bit here and there. A lot of it is learn as you go.
And again, for us, being law enforcement, we go through, most of my officers are retired police officers, and except for one, and she actually went through a police academy, which is way beyond the requirements for the state for a peace officer, but. You get that training in the academy. You get that life experience on how to deal with certain situations. When it comes to the animal end of it, there is training out there. Again, right now I'm through the federation. I'm crossing the state for the last few months, training all the New York State troopers in the different regions on animal cruelty investigation. Do police officers get that? They get it, but they don't get enough of it.
Yeah.
So that's constant training. Our officers continue to learn and get training as well, because when you're doing law enforcement work, laws change, things change, so you have to stay on top of it. So we're constantly doing training.
Well, before we move on to the next section of this podcast, we're just going to take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back for questions from our members.
For over 30 years, the residents of Silver Springs, New York, and all surrounding areas have had the pleasure of indulging in deliciously crafted pizza from Pizza Depot. This small business pizza shop has become a staple in the area, known for its hospitality and excellent comfort food. They have a variety of popular foods, such as subs, paninis, burgers, chicken fingers, wings, salads, and of course, pizza. Pizza Depot has partnered with Animal Friends of Wyoming County in supporting our mission of sponsoring our shelter dogs. Thanks to Lisa and her team, we have been able to sponsor more successful adoptions. So next time you have a hankering for good pizza, consider Pizza Depot in Silver Springs, New York. Their prices are very affordable, and food will always bring a smile to your face. Their address is 130 North Main Street, Silver Springs, New York, 14550. Their phone number is 585-493-5699. That's 585-493-5699. When you place your order, tell them Animal Friends of Wyoming County sent you. Pizza Depot. My mouth is already watering.
All right, well, welcome back to the podcast. We are now going to be going into the part of the podcast where our members get to ask questions to our guests. If you want to be one of these people that gets the privilege of doing this, become a member of Animal Friends. It's $15 a year, and you get some perks, such as our newsletter being sent out to you whenever they get done, and things like this for our child podcast. So, Jesse, why don't you start off with the first question, and we'll go from there.
Great. I'm going to jump down to this question from Emily from Bliss, New York. Emily asks, what should someone do if they suspect animal abuse but aren't sure if it's bad enough to call the police?
I'm going to use an old adage that police officers use. If you suspect something, call. Let the officer investigate it. If it turns out to be nothing, you're not wasting their time. That's what their job is to do, is to look into things. So if you suspect animal cruelty, call. Let people go out, have them take a look. My only thing that I run into, because we have a lot more people in the Rochester area, is that we have groups who will call and report cruelty, and then we'll go out and say, yeah, everything's fine, but then they don't believe us and they continue to call. So, but my thing is if you suspect cruelty, you suspect any crime, call, right? It's that old see something, say something, or else we're not going to know about it. And then, next thing you know, that animal might suffer longer than it needs to suffer.
That's a good rule. I think it's an easier rule for people to follow
Yeah.
versus all the like specific nuances.
Right.
See something, say something. I like that.
All right, well,
Yeah, and be willing, if you turn it in, to give us time to do it. And I love calling people back and say, you know, that was something we needed to look into. Or the dog is okay, so what you see, he does have a house with insulation, or, you know, they are good dog owners, we cleared everything. And they feel better about it, and you know you've done your job. So, yeah.
so I guess the next question I'd have for you, Officer Reno, is from Nicole from North Java. Why is animal abuse so underreported, and how does that affect law enforcement's ability to intervene?
Now you just hit on a sore subject of mine. It's underreported because most people don't want to be involved. Like we just kind of talked about, I don't know if it's really cruelty. I don't want to get the police involved. I don't want to get law enforcement involved. And one of the big issues that I've been here doing this job for 18 years, is New York State only takes reports from police agencies. So if I make an arrest, that report goes through the police agency, which gets reported to the state. We also get called out for, we found a dog that was shot at a park that we cannot solve. Those reports don't get reported to the state. So imagine us we talked about bills and laws in the past. You imagine trying to go to the state legislature and say, this is important, we need this law, and the state legislator tells their aides, well, go research, find out how many cruelty calls we have in New York State. And they come back and say, oh, there was only like 120 throughout the whole state, but those were arrests. Okay, what about the unsolved cases that aren't being reported? So that's why it goes underreported, it's particularly in New York State. Nationally, the FBI changed their reporting requirements in 2016 that are asking law enforcement to report all animal cruelty. A lot of states aren't doing it. So we're having an issue that it's being very unreported, and we need to change things, not only in New York State but across the nation. That it's important that these things get reported because of that interpersonal violence link and the link to everything else of violence, of crime.
That's what I was just thinking of. It seems to be like a gateway or a good indicator. If it's not being reported, you don't have that chance for any type of
And like, I think I said my statistic, we had 3,200 calls for service last year. Of those, we probably had about 900 actual cases, crime cases. And we do a lot of things, right? So that 3,200. And we only had 20 arrests, but those 800, 900 cases, some of those were unfounded or some of those were unsolvable. So, hey, we have a dead dog in a park. We had an abandoned animal. We can't solve that case. And that's not being reported. So think about 800 or so cases just from my area that aren't being reported to the state.
Yeah, well, that's just like what we deal with here in Wyoming County, being so rural that we are, and we don't have like human investigators. We don't have some of this other stuff that maybe some cities would have access to. Whenever we pick up a dog and we're wondering, why'd you get abandoned? There's no way to figure out why it got abandoned other than what we find out here, or that it even was abandoned. There's just so many different factors that we can't. And there are times where we, as animal control, will be very suspicious when someone turns in the dog. And there have been very rare cases where we've actually found out, no, that actually was their dog and they lied to us type thing. But how do you solve some of these cases that, and then the reporting?
You need the reporting and you need the plotting.
Yep.
Where are we finding the animals being abandoned? So you need all that. That's all law enforcement statistical work that is not being done.
One thing, we were talking about this offline before, but we were talking about like if you had a wish list kind of thing. We were talking about regional type work and more professional support for especially rural areas. I guess if you could kind of snap your fingers and say these would be the things that I would change that would make a big impact, what would you say those
So
things
basically,
are?
you're saying you're in charge.
Yeah, you're in
can do
charge.
I can do what I want.
Yeah, you
King
can
for
do
the
what
day,
you
yeah.
want. Like this would make the biggest impact to
Yeah.
the work that you do.
Well, again, because Lollypop is a very large humane society, and we have a lot of resources. The thing is in most of the state, besides outside of New York City, it's very rural. So you have your smaller shelters or your humane societies or even rescues. My biggest thing, I feel, because not every county has an SPCA or has a humane society or whatever, I believe that your bigger humane societies should be regional and be like parent to the smaller shelters or the smaller humane societies, so that everyone's working together jointly and not really fighting each other for donations, or everyone can share from the same pot. And like we have a large law enforcement division. Well, I could oversee people from down here. You just hire people and say, okay, you're going to be assigned to Wyoming County, and you could be the officer for Wyoming County. But I can't do that unless there's some sort of law that says, okay, or there's some sort of written agreement that says, okay, Lollypop Farm is going to be that regional go-to. It's kind of like if you think about the state police, they have different troops, right? You got Troop B, Troop D, right? Troop A. It's kind of like that. Lollypop could be a troop. Central New York could be a troop. The AFWC could be a troop, and you spread it around and they all have their own little group. That would be, I think, organize things more and be able to help more animals.
Yeah, and especially those places that don't have any resources whatsoever.
Right.
And, yeah.
All right. Let's see. We'll only have time, I think, for maybe one or two more questions. This one right here, we already touched upon. Sarah from Sheldon asked, "How does the lack of a national animal abuse registry make it harder to track repeat offenders?" We've already talked about that when it comes to like the statewide level. On a national level, Sarah, contact your senator, contact your congressman, try to get that spearheaded. That would be cool too. But yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a?
I'm trying to look at these last few here.
That last one is
Yeah.
actually going to be the main one to close this whole thing up.
Okay, so you want me to go with that one?
Sure.
Paul from Bennington, New York asked, what message would you want the public to take away about the role police play in protecting both people and animals?
That kind of would go to this whole topic here. What do you want our audience to know when they walk away from hearing or seeing this?
Well, I want the audience to know that there are people you can call to help animals, whether it's dog control, whether it's Humane Society, a humane officer, or your local police department. If you're not getting the satisfaction that you think you are from your local, and I'm not saying Wyoming County, I'm just saying
In general, yep.
I'm talking because I cover a lot of area, and this is from experience. There are some people who feel that their local police department don't care about animals. If you don't feel like you're getting that, then contact a boss from that agency. Go above the officer's head, go above the sergeant's head, go right to the chief and say, hey, I have an issue with this and I want to know how your department's going to handle it. Animal cruelty is a big indicator of violence in the community. And if you can arrest somebody, not to diminish animals, but if you can arrest somebody and get them into the system for abusing an animal, you might prevent that child abuse. You might prevent that next shooting. You might prevent that person from a road rage incident because they're already in the system.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to something I remember from you a long time ago, and please correct me if I'm getting any of these details wrong. You gave, I feel like, if I remember correctly, you said that there was an instance where a husband was abusing his wife, and they were trying to get him for something because it's, of course, bad. They found out he was abusing the dog, and they were able to get him on more strict charges or harsher charges for the animal abuse
Yes.
than the spousal abuse.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just a crazy way to think about and look at it. And anyone listening to this would be like, how does that compute? But it
wasn't so much that he was abusing the wife. It was so much that he was damaging property and destroying her house.
Mm-hmm.
And then he took her dog and tried to throw it across a parking lot to injure it. Unfortunately, fortunately, he didn't injure it. So when I was called in, I charged him with the cruelty because he's throwing that animal.
Mm-hmm.
When we went to court, the DA's office basically said your case is stronger because they have mutual property together. So your case is stronger. We're going to go with your case. And we won.
Yeah.
We won that case.
Well, it's just this whole thing. Like you said, we could talk for hours
Very interesting.
on this topic, and we probably will ask you to come back later on when we want to do a part 2 of this and everything. But thank you for being part of this podcast and giving your insight and anything. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I learned a lot just from, so thank you. I think
Thank you for having me,
It's been
and
great.
I'll be happy to come back.
I think one of the things I'd like to leave with anyone listening is law enforcement is there to help you, and you have to respect them. You have to give them some respect when they come. We're seeing on the news where they're being stalked, and while they're trying to enforce laws, there's being barrages of people trying to stop it. That's not what we want to do. We want a good relationship with you, and we want to do our job, and give them all a break. Let them be able to do what they need to do. So. We have some respect for that. So
Yes.
there are really good people out there on the road, in animal control situations, in humane situations, investigative situations, who are doing the darndest they can to make it work and make it right. So you got to give them a chance. So
Yep.
yeah.
Yes, thank you. Those
Yep.
are good words to leave off by. So thank you again, Officer, for joining us. I keep saying Officer. That's because that in my head I'm like Officer Reno.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And thank you to our to Jesse and to Officer Goodell here for joining us too. Thank you guys for watching our podcast. Please like and subscribe this video and share it with a friend. It helps us out tremendously. Consider giving us a tax deductible donation. I can't talk at the end of the podcast, so my apologies. But consider giving us a tax deductible donation through our website, animalfriendsofwyco.com, to help keep projects like this as educational podcasts alive and going, and help us sponsor the dogs of the Wyoming County Animal Shelter. Until we see you next time, have a good rest of your day. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Child Podcast, hosted by Animal Friends of Wyoming County. To learn more about us, visit our website at www.animalfriendsofwyco.com. And if you're interested in adopting a dog, please call the Wyoming County Animal Shelter at 585-786-8938. This has been a production of Knox Luna Films, LLC.